and welcome to my Carolina homestead. Today I'm going to be dehydrating eggs. So I picked up some fresh eggs from a local contact that I have who raises her own eggs on her property and got those washed up. Before you start though, you're going to need some silicone trays with the edge around them, just so that it'll hold liquid in your dehydrator. So first I'm going to start off by cracking these eggs individually into a glass container, just making sure that I'm not putting any shells into the mixture, and also just to make sure that each egg is a viable egg. Once I get all the eggs cracked and put into the mixing bowl, I will turn the mixer on medium, just to make sure that the eggs are mixed thoroughly. One of the benefits of dehydrating eggs is, for me, if I can find locally sourced fresh eggs and process them through dehydration and make them shelf stable really for several years if they're stored properly. If you keep them out of the light, I like to store them in a mason jar with an oxygen absorber, and then I also will remove the excess air by using a food saver machine with a mason jar attachment on that. So they're shelf stable for several years. I can use them in baking dishes, and they're also great for a quick scrambled egg breakfast. From my experience, I have found that about 1 dozen eggs mixed together is going to equal roughly 2 cups. And for each of the trays, or the liners, I should say, the silicone liners that go into the dehydrator, for me, each tray will hold 1 cup of the egg mixture. So I have 6 liners to go into my dehydrator, so for me to fill that up, I would need to do 3 dozen eggs. So now I'm coming over to my dehydrator. I think this is an 8-tray dehydrator. It's called Redhead. I've had it for quite a while. I got it used off Marketplace and it works phenomenally. So right now I'm just setting the temperature for 140 degrees, and I'm going to set the timer for about 10 hours. And then I'm going to start adding the egg mixture into the silicone liners. So again, for my particular liners, I'm going to add 1 cup of the egg mixture to each tray. I like to add it slowly because I have rushed this process and made a huge mess inside of my dehydrator. So I'm being more patient, taking my time, putting this egg mixture in this time. Now, if you have these same liners and you decide to add more than 1 cup of your egg mixture into your liners, just know that it will extend your dehydration time. I like to keep the mixture as thin as possible so it dehydrates quicker. So this is what it looks like after about 1.5 hours in the dehydrator. You'll start to see some small solid pieces start to form. But what I pay attention to is when it starts to develop a crust around the outside and start to split. Now this is what it looks like after about 4 hours. You can see that it's starting to split and crack. This area here is very thin. It's incredibly flaky. You can see I'm trying to pick it up. It's almost like a really thin, almost like cracker texture. So I'm going to let that go just a little bit more. So a couple hours have passed, and now it's time for me to start to trim this edge off. Because the dehydration process does cook the product a little bit, I don't want all the nutrients removed by overcooking. So as it's fully dehydrated, I do come in and trim that out. So just take the edge of a spoon and just gently press on it, just to sort of perforate it and pop that out. And I'll just stick that into a bowl, and then I will put this liner right back in to dehydrate more. These took about 8.5 hours. You'll know your eggs are almost completely dehydrated when you take your tray out and it looks like a broken sunflower. So right now I am just trimming the dehydrated parts off. And I'm going to put those in a bowl and put that to the side for both of the trays that I've dehydrated today. And you'll be left with this portion of egg that it's kind of sticky, really kind of tacky in the center portion where it's the darkest brown. It reminds me of like a melted gummy bear. So what I'll do is I'll pry that off of the dehydrator liner, and that area right in the center there, it's really sticky and tacky, and I just flip that over and I will return that back to the dehydrator for about another hour. Now, as you can see, the finished product, it's incredibly shiny, and that's because of the fats that are in that egg mixture. So it does have an oil layer on the top. When I first started dehydrating eggs, I just thought there was no possible way that I was going to be able to grind this up and it was going to stay loose inside of a jar for storage, but it does beautifully, as I'm going to show you here in a few minutes. So to grind mine up, you can use a food processor. I've done that before, but it doesn't quite get it as fine as I like it. It makes it more of a pellety type texture, crystally, instead of a fine powder, which is what I like because it does rehydrate better and faster. So that is my preference. So I'm going to use the flat blade in my Magic Bullet because that is the grinder blade. You can use the appliance of your preference, a blender, a Vitamix, you know, whatever that gives you the desired consistency that you're looking for. So I'm going to just grind this up until it gets to the fine powder that I prefer, and then I will get it put into a mason jar. What I do not recommend doing is putting your dehydrated eggs into a grain mill or a grain grinding attachment to your stand mixer. And that's because the eggs, even dehydrated, they're very oily and it will gum up your grinder or your grinder attachment. So the final outcome for me after grinding is I'm looking for consistency more like fine cornmeal, and I prefer that because it just rehydrates so much quicker. I know that the eggs are fully dehydrated when I can put them in a jar and roll it and I don't see any big solid pieces in there or any clumping together, or that it's not sticking to the jar. So now I'm just going to show you how I rehydrate the eggs. Generally 1 tablespoon is going to be the equivalent of 1 large egg. So I like to start off with equal amounts of egg powder to 1 tablespoon of warm water. Rehydrating with equal parts will give you a firmer textured egg. So I like to do 1 to 1.5 is my preference, especially for scrambled eggs. Once your egg is fully rehydrated, which only takes a few minutes, add it to your skillet with a little bit of butter, salt and pepper, and you have a beautiful scrambled egg dish. Thank you for joining me today on My Carolina Homestead. If you like this video, like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.